Bill Gardner was re-elected to his 21st term as Secretary of State in New Hampshire, easily the longest tenured in the country. And when it comes to the New Hampshire primary or presidential politics in general, you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone with the depth of knowledge that he has. He's often described as a New Hampshire icon, if not a legend, but even legends blush sometimes, as he does when such adjectives are used to describe his career. And I'm honored to call him a friend. And Bill Gardner is my next guest this morning. Good to see you, sir.
Nice to be here, Jack.
Indeed. So, yeah, looking back over 42 years at the State House, 2016, that must stand out as something that a little different than you're used to.
I'm not sure we'll ever see in our lifetimes. We may, but this was so different.
It was.
In so many different ways.
And for New Hampshire's role in everything, from the filing period all the way to the general election, what's your take on it, the big picture?
Well, I couldn't be more proud of the people of New Hampshire, because their participation level in all of this from the beginning to the end is just phenomenal compared to what happens in the rest of the country. And that includes not just the primary, but in the general election as well. And I mean, we've broken record after record after record.
And why do you think that is? Because a lot of it, we've talked about this at length before, like in Oregon, for instance, they've made it very easy to vote there. Drive by, drop it in a ballot box, they mail the ballot to your house. Here in New Hampshire, though, we kind of show that those conveniences might even be a little counterproductive to turnout, right?
Yeah, we've learned, because of the primary, things happen at the end. People in this state always have waited until the end, pretty much, to make a final decision. Some people can make it early, but most people don't. And they want to see the whole thing, and that applied this time to the presidential election as it has in presidential primaries in years past. So the people are used to it here, and campaigns build to this crescendo at the end. And people want to see everything. Why would they make up their mind early when, comparing it to sports, why would you decide in the third inning? You're gonna want to wait. You're gonna want to see everything. And so that's how our politics is here, and I hope it always, we're unusual in the country because over 40 states, Election day is not the kind of day that it is in New Hampshire. It's in many states just an afterthought. They've already had 20 election days before that, or 25 in some states. So by the time you get to election day, it's nothing.
Sure. And does it make you laugh sometimes when you hear other people around the country say, oh, after 3 months of TV ads and constant campaigning, I'm so tired of this. We've been doing this for a couple of years now, and we always do.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, but the engagement, a perfect example is in this cycle. You have Donald Trump, an outsider, who wins the Republican primary, Bernie Sanders on the other side, landslide victory over Hillary Clinton, who's obviously the front runner coming into this election cycle. New Hampshire really kind of telegraphed the frustration that the rest of the country wound up showing when they went to the ballot box, right?
Right, right. I mean, they watch us and we watch them.
Moving forward, I mean, there's always a knock on New Hampshire for our disproportional say in this process, being the first in the nation. How would you characterize the health of the primary right now?
It's as strong as it's ever been. This cycle didn't do anything to damage the New Hampshire primary. And we don't, in some states people say, well, if you're not this kind of a state or that kind of a state, but we've had it for 100 years. And 4 years from now, it'll be the 100th anniversary of being first in the nation.
Yeah.
And we've got a lot of tradition that is really significant.
How do you defend it when, like, say, Nevada jumping the calendar, and you're talking about having to have a primary in December before Christmas? That must be something that is difficult, and you're always very calm about it. You never get worked up. You never yell into a TV camera or anything like that. You say, we're going to let it play out. But how difficult is it to be as steady as you always are in the face of these challenges?
Well, we have this law that says that our tradition will be upheld, that we'll be at least a week ahead of any other state that has a similar election. And if that means going into the year before, we have said we're going to go into the year before. We've never had to do that, but states know that if we have to, we will.
And you've always said that New Hampshire will be first as long as New Hampshire voters have the will to keep it.
That's exactly. No one will take it away from us. It will only be the will of the people here not to have it anymore. Because we're going to have it. We do it. It's run here. The people pay for it. The people are part of it. And however, that cartoon once that had Pluto, the planet Pluto, sitting next to New Hampshire, and they were talking about how Pluto had been downgraded. It was no longer a planet. And New Hampshire just said, just say you're a planet anyway. And it's the same thing. We've been downgraded in the past, that we're really not a state. And we've just, it's
a good analogy.
We've always found ways to deal with it.
But the candidates themselves are an important component, because if they don't come or recognize the value in coming, then basically it is a beauty contest.
And there's so many different institutions in the state that are part of this. Yours is a major one. The different roles that people play over the years. It's one of those things that the support is very, very strong. What other matter can you get almost unanimity? And you're never going to get total.
No.
But it's the people here have supported it, have turned out, have made it so that when candidates leave and they look back a month later or 6 months later or 5 years later and they're asked, what do you remember about the process? They remember New Hampshire, because it has always been so different.
Yeah, and we always hear them talk about it in the general election after the nominating process. They always talk about New Hampshire. And even the candidates are so wide-eyed when they walk into your office on filing, during the filing period, and it becomes very real to them then. Even Donald Trump pointed out, wow, this is like an amazing moment in my life.
He didn't know that the desk was the person who wrote the law over 100 years ago. And people, when they come in the first time, when Barack Obama came in, they're all different. They have different personalities. They do things a little differently. But the tradition is so strong. And where else in the country do candidates actually go to file? It doesn't happen in other places.
Tradition is a big part of it. You know, some people might view it from the outside as corny, but it is a big part of it. Coming up, talk about people not agreeing on everything. In this legislative cycle, there's going to be some efforts to change the way New Hampshire votes, whether it's same-day registration, residency requirements is something that I know that is important to you. First, what do you think? Actually, let me back it up. So Donald Trump tweets widespread voter fraud, names New Hampshire. No evidence of that, correct?
Correct. I don't think that he actually knows that people that don't show an identification not only have to sign an affidavit, but have their picture taken. My guess is he had no clue that, and we're the only state in the country where that happens. So think about it. If you're someone who's illegal, or are you going to want to stand in a polling place and have your picture taken that you voted? My guess is he didn't know that, because
seems like a reasonable safeguard, no question. But residency is a big issue that you've pointed to, because you're concerned that drive-by voting does exist, and it does exist, but not to the degree that some would suggest. Correct?
We have had in every state election since the Help America Vote Act passed, even going back to before that, at least one prosecuted case of an example of drive-by voting. So what does that mean? How do you quantify that? Now, some people say if you get caught for DWI, you're probably driven drunk 10 times before you get caught. How many? But we don't know about this voting. But what we do know is that the public believes by substantial number that there's voter fraud. They believe that. Gallup did a poll 2 weeks before the election. Other national polling outfits have done the same. And it's always been more than 50% of the electorate believes that there's voter fraud. And so one of the most important reasons that people come out to vote is how confident they are in the process. And the more ways you can provide that confidence, the bigger the turnout. It's not about making it easier. The facts across the country show that. Just because you make
it's about making it matter and let voters know that.
People believe that their vote counts, that it means something. And that's the confidence level. And this summer, we're at the top of the country on confidence level. Whenever there's been polls done asking people, how confident that the way you voted is actually going to be how it's counted.
Sure. And we have only about a minute to go. What changes do you think are reasonable that need to be put in place? Obviously, it'd be up to the legislature.
I think it's appropriate to take a look at Election Day registration. It's been 22 years. There were good reasons why we did it. And we ought to go back and look at all that again. And there might be some ways that we can change that process on Election Day. But there might be some legislators that have some real significant and positive examples of why 22 years ago what we did is not appropriate today. So that should be on the table, and it will be on the table.
Residency?
The residency is it's another important part of the confidence of this, but it's tricky, and that's why we've had a hard time with domicile versus resident and getting by the courts on that issue. And there's a lot of time being spent right now dealing with that in preparation for this session.
Very quickly, you said that you'd be happy with 15 days, 13 days, whatever, just something to give a little buffer. We only have about 30 seconds. You've been doing this for a long time. Any plans to slow down, or is this just too much fun?
Well, God willing, I'd like to be involved for the 100th anniversary of the First of the Nation 4 years from now. We'll see.
You better be, because I can't imagine a 100th anniversary of the First of the Nation primary without Bill Gardner being here. I don't think a whole lot of people could. Well, sir, it was an honor. It's good to see you. It's going to be busy. And
thanks, Josh.
Thanks for coming in.